welcome to the WPIAL Blitz Show. My name's Bruce Badgley. There's my good friend Ian McMeans, and Ian, we've got a very special guest with us tonight.
Yes, I'm thrilled to have the head coach from my alma mater, North Catholic, Chris Rizzo, joining us. So, Coach Rizzo, thanks so much for joining us on the show tonight. And congratulations on the quarterfinal win over Elizabeth Forward. Nice little bit of revenge from last year's very close defeat. But, how's the vibe around the team right now heading into a big semifinal against Avonworth?
Yeah, first, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. In terms of the vibe of the team, these guys, they work really hard all summer, all fall, and then even going all the way back to the winter. And if there's one thing I can really say about the players and the team is that they're just excited for another 48 minutes of football. The chance to go play in the stadium is something that's kind of like a right, a sacred right if you get far enough here in Western Pennsylvania, especially. We just had the discussion today that not all states play their district championships in pro stadiums. And it's just kind of an awesome deal here for Western Pennsylvania kids. So they're just looking forward to the opportunity to go play and potentially get an opportunity to go do that. So they're excited.
Yeah, cool. So,
Yeah,
fun little
that's go ahead,
piece of
Ian.
North Catholic history here. That I don't know if you're aware of, Coach, but so every time North has played in a WPIAL championship game, they've beaten Avonworth in the semifinals.
Yeah, that's a piece of history that I actually was privy to.
Okay.
Um, but definitely, not something I think that'll have a huge contingency on this game. Different
Yeah.
teams for sure.
Yeah. It is kind of cool though the way this rivalry has progressed over time, coming from, back in the late 2000s, early 2010s when both teams were single A size schools, and then kind of moving up together in size through the classifications, and both teams having success, both teams winning WPIAL titles. North obviously won the state championship game in 2013. Avonworth's been there a few times too. So a nice kind of, confluence of storylines here coming together for this semifinal for two schools that have followed a similar path to get here.
Yeah, I mean, it's that's a testament to the coaching staffs both here at North and over at Avonworth about navigating population growth in their schools, bumping up to different classifications, navigating that whole thing, and then being able to be consistently competitive year in and year out is something that you just have to be able to tip your cap, particularly to Avonworth because Coach Joncourt's been there a lot longer than my tenure here, especially. But all the coaching staffs that have worked through those years and all those challenges and changes, you got to tip your cap to them for keeping both programs consistently competitive.
Coach, you played at Avonworth earlier in the season and lost to them. What do you do? What do you change as far as the coaching staff when you go in and evaluate a team you're playing for the second time that you lost to earlier in the season?
Shoot, I mean, it's the second time this year, but I mean, we've gone, we've had a couple games with them over the past couple of years, and
Sure.
they've gotten the best of us in those last couple of meetings. And you just kind of got to take a hard look in the mirror and see, where are you not putting your players in potentially the best position? Where are you losing in the details in some of those marginal plays, and trying to find a way to maybe just shift a couple of things around to give the leaders and the guys on your team the best opportunity to go make plays. We've looked at the tape a lot and a long time over the past weekend, and we're just going to try and find a way to win in some of those marginal things. I mean, they have so much. They have a lot of talent over there at Avonworth. They got a couple of really special players. And if there's one thing that you notice for sure on tape is that they run what they run and they run it really well. They're a pretty well-oiled machine. So got to make a couple of adjustments and find a way to get some of our players in a position to impact the game.
Coach, can you talk a little bit about your offensive philosophy as a whole throughout this season? You obviously have had the WPIAL's leading passer for the last 2 years, but also your run game's really come around too. And we always talk on this show about how the ability to be multiple is important as you get deeper and deeper into the playoffs, because sometimes teams will take one thing away and you have to be able to do something well. So that run and pass balance, I feel like you've really done a good job of balancing it out this year between the two of them.
Yeah, and I can't really even take a lot of credit for that. I mean, our offensive coordinator, Mike McMahon, does a wonderful job. All of our offensive coaches do a wonderful job. I mean, between Tim and Denny and John and Dan, all those guys do such a good job week in and week out of getting our kids prepared to go play. In terms of a philosophy, right? Like we're gonna stick with what works for sure. And whether that's the ground game with Logan and Nate, or whether that's letting Joey spray the ball around the field. It's just we're gonna try and find what's working for us on any particular Friday night and run with that. And honestly, I gotta shout out the offensive line a little bit because when you get into a run game, uh, that's a little bit more of an attacking posture for an offensive lineman. But when you throw the ball around as much as we do, they do a great job in pass protection as well. I mean, Joey, as talented of a quarterback as he is and as gifted as he is in mastering our offense, he needs five guys that are willing to stand in front of there and, keep between defenders and him. So philosophically, it's just about trying to find ways to get our playmakers the ball, whether on the ground or in the air, moving a couple of guys around and letting Joey and all those offensive guys play fast.
And you
How
mentioned
about
the
any kind
offensive
of
line.
special? Go ahead, Ian. I'm
Oh yeah,
sorry.
you mentioned the offensive line. That's something we always like to try and give shout outs to on the show. So if you want to list those guys by name too, we firmly believe that football is won and lost in the trenches. So if you want to, get them some publicity too,
Sure,
we're all for
sure. I
that.
mean, we've had a lot of guys playing for us this year, but the core group of guys has been Joey Cullington. He's our center. Max Lindner plays guard for us. Don McNally's the left tackle and has done a solid job all year. Um, Jackson Shade has helped out at right guard, Landon Walker at right tackle. And we've actually had a sophomore in Lane Behe step in and play right tackle, and Landon's bumped down to play right guard. So we've had to move and shuffle a couple of guys around, but that's been the core unit for the majority of the time. And then you also have to shout out, like, a couple of the tight ends like Tommy Arth and Nick Franco, who, when you get into 12 personnel, aren't afraid to get down there in the trenches and lead block as well. Sometimes it's an unglamorous job, but um, we make sure that whenever you look at guys like Logan Shade, who's just eclipsed 1,000 yards rushing, or Joey, who's had two wonderful games back to back, those guys, particularly Logan and Joey, they know those things don't happen in a vacuum. But yeah, those guys have done a great job for us all year.
Coach, you go into a game and we got a game plan, obviously, uh, and you've played this team, pretty often. It sounds like. But how far do you go in a game with the game plan before you say, you know what, this just isn't working? We got to try something new.
Hopefully not too far. You spend some times agonizing in late nights and early mornings watching the tape, and you feel like you put a pretty decent plan together. So you really hope that you don't have to scrap it. But if it does come down to a moment where it's like this isn't working out, it's maybe not so much about our the X's and O's might not be working out. It's more about, are the guys thinking too much? Are they having a hard time getting aligned? And are they just playing fast? If those things aren't showing up, then you got to go back to some day one stuff to get your kids back into a comfortable rhythm and let them go play fast. Hopefully that's never the case. We've never, thankfully at this point, have never had to scrap anything into a game. But really, as a coach, it's just about, hey, are the guys getting aligned? Are they comfortable, and are they playing fast? If they're not doing that, then you gotta take a look in the mirror and get them back into a position to do those things, because that's the only way they're going to be able to go make plays.
Yeah, good thing. Go ahead, Ian.
So you've talked about a couple of your assistant coaches too on the offensive side of the ball. Do you want to talk about anyone on the defensive side of the ball as well? I know that, head coaching doesn't happen in a vacuum. There's a whole support system around you as well.
No, I'm nowhere without the guys. Defensively, Marquise is our DB's coach. Phil O'Hara is our outside linebackers coach. Joe Iquin is our defensive line coach. And then Luke Harris is our inside linebackers coach. Those guys week in and week out, like we take a lot of flack on defense in terms of, people say that, North Catholic's offense is, lights out, but their defense is, doesn't show up to play all the time. Um, those guys do such a good job with the kind of game planning that we put together, the kind of effort it takes to go out there and try and stop some of these really potent offensive teams that we've had a chance to go up against, and really, really talented teams, right? But those guys, between the offensive staff, the defensive staff, the volunteer guys, down to the camera guys and the ball boys, um, you know, the head coaching is nothing without the support system. So I can't thank those guys enough, and they really do a wonderful job with our kids week in and week out.
Coach, what do you think is the single biggest key to this game for your success to come out on top? What do you have to do better than Avonworth to come out on top?
Well, they're the champs until they're not anymore, and I think our kids kind of understand that a little bit. And we as a program kind of understands that. So if you want to beat the best, or if you want to be the best, excuse me, you got to go beat the best. Um, in terms of trying to prep for Avonworth, it's just a matter of getting the kids into a comfortable game plan and letting them go out and hit it at 1,000 miles an hour. We don't want to think too much. Um, not going to give too much away, but like try and go out there and play your most complete game. I would say that the tape, you go back and you watch the last couple of meetings, we haven't ever really played a complete ball game against them. Um, we have yet to really put our best effort forward on offense or defense. So simplify, try and get guys aligned, and then put the kids in a position to go out there and play with their hair on fire on defense and then on offense. Get the thing rolling a little bit, try and establish a little bit of a run game and go out there and compete for 48 minutes. I don't think there's any kind of secret sauce to it. It's just about, getting ready to try and get over top of that hurdle and go out there and try and put down a extraordinarily successful and championship caliber opponent. Just getting them mentally ready for that is all we can do. And then the 11 guys on the field have to go perform.
So I will say, I'm a little biased as being an alumni, but it's been incredibly fun to just watch this team grow and watch you guys, the last couple years, just everything kind of come together here and really kind of culminate with the win over Elizabeth Forward last week, because that was a game last year that was so close, it was back and forth, and then you went out and in a pretty bad weather condition game really were able to do whatever you wanted to do, which was very fun to follow. So I wish you guys all the best of luck this week. One final question before we let you go. You guys are kind of in a unique position here where you've played all three other semifinalist teams. So just kind of looking at, we've talked a lot about Avonworth, talked a lot about North Catholic, just looking at the other game for a minute, because you've played both Amani Christian and Central Valley. How do you think those two teams kind of stack up against each other from what you've seen from your games?
Um, I think when you talk about a really good matchup, Central Valley is a team that has been consistently a playoff contender and a championship team. And with Amani, they have an extraordinarily deep pool of talent. And both teams, I think, have a really, really solid run game, defenses that are fast and fly around. It's going to be an exciting matchup. It's actually one of those ones that you kind of wish you weren't playing on Friday, and you were playing on a different day, because it'd be curious to kind of see how that thing plays out. But for that game, that's going to be a defensive struggle. I think both teams are extraordinarily, fundamental and talented when it comes to, running the football, and then executing some of those third down things. So I think it's going to be a great game. In terms of, like, I don't know if I'm going to do a pick 'em in terms of who's going to be who's going to be the team to come on top, but
We won't put you in that spot.
yeah,
No, we would never do that,
Yeah.
Coach.
I'll tell you that if you're in the area though, that's going to be a great ball game to go watch.
Well, this has been just a lot of fun. We appreciate your time there, Coach Rizzo. I know that it's meant a lot to Ian. It means a lot to us when we have any coach on the program because, you guys do such an incredible job leading, young men. We appreciate everything you do and everything you do for this game, man. So, best of luck this week and go get them.
Gents, I appreciate that. I just, I appreciate what you guys are doing to cover high school sports and expose our players, our athletes, our kids, whether it's North Catholic kids or anybody in Western Pennsylvania. It definitely was not like this when I played football back in Bethel Park, back in the day a little bit. But what you guys are doing is incredible. And just one more time, I want to make sure I say thanks to my entire coaching staff. Dan, Denny, Joe. John, Luke, Marquise, Mike, Sarv, Tim, and Phil, right? Like, I get to sit here and talk with you guys, but those guys do so much stuff behind the scenes. Just really blessed to be able to coach for our community and with these guys.
All right. Well,
Thanks so much,
congratulations,
Coach.
Coach. And
Yep.
all you got
Good
to do,
Jason
just
Fide
exit
and
out
forever
and
true.
yeah, just exit out. We'll take care of it from here. See
Thanks
you
a
later.
lot, guys. I appreciate your time.
All right, man.
All
Thanks
right.
a lot. Wow. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen you smile so much as during that interview, Ian. It had to be very special for you, man.
I'll tell you what, this was one of the most nervous I ever was for an interview because I was like, this is like my alma mater, and I usually try and not be like too biased, on the show and try and give, equal weight to everybody. But being as I, went to North Catholic for 4 years and have very strong feelings about the school and the program. I've a lot of very fond memories of. I've said it before, I was in the band and my freshman year we beat a Seton LaSalle team that was one of the top ranked teams going into the playoffs. We upset them. They had Bruce Gradkowski, who went on to play in the
Yeah,
NFL,
sure.
playing quarterback. They beat us like 35-7 early in the season. And then we got them in the playoffs and we ran like 3 or 4 safeties high the whole game, took them to overtime and beat them in overtime. And like all the student section just like jumped over the fence and ran down the hill and stormed the field. And it was incredible. And then we were kind of bad the rest of the time. I was
Oh
in high
well.
school, especially my senior year, we were really bad. But I'm really grateful for my time at North and have very strong feelings toward the program. So I was really glad that Coach Rizzo was able to join us tonight, and hopefully anyone else from North Catholic that tuned into the show or watches it later
Yeah.
enjoys the interview. So
Yeah,
without,
look,
yeah,
we're all fans first, I mean, that's
yeah,
the thing is we fell in love with this game as a fan, and
mhm,
it that never goes away. If it ever does go away, then we'll stop doing what we're doing, because we love this game and all we're trying to do is promote it in the best way that we can.
yes, yeah, absolutely. All right. So without further ado, this is the WPIAL Blitz Show semifinals edition. So, for those North Catholic people that may have watched the show previously or just watched the interview, you may recognize so this is a little, WPIAL Blitz behind the scenes here. So the background stadium here that I use is actually JC Stone Field in North Park where North Catholic plays. So
Oh,
this has been my background image since we started doing the show in
yes.
2020. You're very familiar with it. You probably just thought it was another football field, but this is my
I actually what I thought it was something related to Heinz Field at the time, but you can see it really is when you go in the far end there, that it looks like a high school field there, and that is
yes.
turf. But hey,
Yep.
before we get too far, I mean the Clareton stuff has already started with Gary Mullen on you know
Oh, what did he say? Because
well, he just the streak is over of shutouts, but onward they went. So
yes, that is true. That we will talk plenty about that as we get into it. So um I'm gonna
but shout out to Gary. And
yes.
look, last week we had great conversations, even sidebars going on through the chat on what was going on. And that's why we do this, partially because Ian's got to put the kids to bed, but we do it live so that we have opportunity to interact with the fans. You still
Yes,
there?
and if Yes, I am. Yeah, I had to relocate to my normal spot here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my kids had been in the other room, so I, had to call an audible for where I was set up. But we're back in the normal spot now. So
Back in the dining room.
yeah, yeah, there we go. Didn't need our large audience to see me walking through my house and fumbling with my power cord and all that stuff. But we're
That's
back
good.
now.
All right.
Yeah. So, thank you everyone for tuning in tonight and joining the WPIAL Blitz show. You can find us on social media as well as steelcityblitz.com, where I will have preview articles for all of the semifinals and championship games that will be happening this weekend.
And those have been quite fabulous, Ian. I
Yeah.
mean, those have been well received by the fans. They just love that.
Yeah, and I did something a little different this year. Was I published individual posts for each classification rather
Yeah.
than like just doing one giant 4,000 word article. So it seems like it's worked out pretty well to have an individual article for each classification. So I may continue on to do that in the future. But
Okay.
big also before we go any farther, big shout out to Chris at END2008 on Twitter for all the graphics that he does, helmet graphics for everyone. Dude's just awesome. He's out there, putting together not only brackets and graphics for Pennsylvania matchups, but I saw he posted a Texas
Texas
high
won
school
tonight.
one
Yeah.
the other day. Like, Chris is awesome. If you're not following Chris at END2008 on Twitter, please go do that, because what he does for high school football in Pennsylvania with all of his helmet graphics and everything else. And I'm always so happy when I see his graphics pop up on either some other website using them, or I think the PIAA used them in their program last year. When I went out to Fort Cherry and visited their stadium, they had a Fort Cherry helmet that I knew he made
Wow.
on one of the banners there. I mean, like, it just warms my heart when I see how wide of an influence he has. So we can't do what we do as well as we do it, right? Like, we use a lot of graphics on this show, and I can say I can't do half of what I do as well without Chris. So
Yeah.
Chris is
No,
amazing.
he is amazing. A lot of people rely on him, and we really appreciate everything he does.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk. So we are into the semifinals and finals this week. So finals in 6A and 4A, and semifinals in the other four classifications. And I love streaks. So let's talk about streaks. Aliquippa was in the semifinals for the 19th straight season and beat Newcastle. We'll talk a lot about that to get into the championship game.
Yeah.
So the Quips getting back into the title game, but some, decade plus streaks of getting just to the semifinals. And some of these classifications, right? It's not easy to get to the semifinals, right? There's a lot of good teams you have to get through just to get to that level. And especially streaks that date back beyond 10 years, right? That's going back to the four classification era where there were 16 teams making the playoffs in each classification. So you had to win multiple playoff games just to get into the semifinals. So some really impressive streaks here. And then as far as consecutive finals appearances, Central Catholic, North Allegheny going to meet again in the 6A championship game, and McKeesport getting to the finals for the third straight year. And then Pine Richland and Avonworth could get there for the fourth straight year if they're able to win this week as well. So some teams carrying some streaks into these semifinals, a lot of teams that have been here before, but that should make for some really good matchups when you've got teams and programs that are experienced playing at this level. And we do have some newcomers too that we'll talk about throughout the show.
Yeah, there's some newcomers, but yeah, this has definitely been the year of the usual suspects, and not a lot of new guys breaking through, but still in all, very exciting throughout.
Yes. And I will say, with one small caveat though, it's the usual suspects, but maybe not in the usual way, right? Like
Yeah,
with
right.
Aliquippa,
Hmm.
they were the number 7 seed. They needed a wild card just to get into the playoffs, right? They had some ups and downs. They lost a couple conference games, and all of a sudden they, knocked off Trinity, shut out Newcastle. They're back in the championship game where they were for 16 straight years until they lost in the semis last year. So,
Sure.
it is kind of the usual suspects, but not the usual way of getting there. All right, so let's talk about some top performers from this past week. There's a lot on here because I wanted to highlight what some kids have done throughout the playoffs as well. But the big one, Cole Newpaver from Peters Township, 4 rushing touchdowns and a receiving touchdown. They were in a tight game against Bethel Park, and Cole Newpaver just turned it on in the second half and carried Peters all the way to victory and back to the semifinals. Khalil Taylor for Pine Richland scored 4 touchdowns in 4 different ways: a kick return, a receiving touchdown, a pick six, and a punt return, and showing all the reasons why he's a 4-star recruit, probably soon to be 5-star recruit. Joey Feliski from North Catholic, who was the WPIAL's passing leader. He was our player of the week last week when he went 23 of 24. This week, he had 2 incompletions, 13 of 15 for 263 and 5 touchdowns. But like in two, look at this ridiculous stat
He only
line.
has 3 incompletions in the playoffs.
Yeah,
Incredible.
Through 2 games, he has 3 incompletions, almost 700 yards and 11 touchdowns. Like just an incredible stat line for Joey
Wow.
Felitsky from North Catholic. Keemon Spell, the star running back from McKeesport, put up 331 yards and 3 touchdowns in what was a rematch of last year's 4A championship game against Thomas Jefferson. That included a 97-yard touchdown run. So he's up to 518 yards and 7 touchdowns so far in the playoffs. DeMar Olds played all the year at wide receiver for Bishop Canavan, and then their quarterback was ineligible for the playoffs because he was a transfer. So Olds, who is a wide receiver recruit, a D1 wide receiver recruit, had to transition to playing quarterback in the playoffs and had another big game this week, and has put up 269 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, 113 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns, and a pick six on defense throughout 2 playoff games in a position he's never played before, right? Like, this is
Yeah.
the incredible thing. Like, he's a wide receiver. They had to stick him at quarterback, and, he's led them to the semifinals.
Yeah, and that is that's actually pretty common in high school football that, sometimes you just you put your best athlete at quarterback and, have him distribute the ball and, run himself. And that's usually a pretty good formula.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see how it plays this week against Clairton, but I think we need to give a shout out to DeMar for what he's done, making a position switch in the playoffs, right? He didn't play quarterback at all this season, and, playoff time rolls around. It's like, okay, well, we need a quarterback. And then Duron Barksdale, the Pitt commit from Steel Valley, in their first playoff game, ran for 213 yards and 5 touchdowns and added a 33-yard pass as well in there. And then finally, the 2 running backs from Upper St. Clair. Upper St. Clair went down 14-0 against Woodland Hills, and in a tough road environment in the Wolverine. I could have packed it in, but John Banbury and Dante Curry both ran for over 100 yards. They've both put up a bunch of yards through 2 playoff games and 8 total touchdowns between them. So this Upper St. Clair running game is really clicking, which should make for a good matchup this week against Peters Township, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, we sure will.
All right, so let's start in 6A, where Central Catholic dominated Cannon McMillan. Roman Thompson ran for 3 touchdowns. Chris Black, their freshman star, ran for 168 yards and a touchdown. And then in the other semifinal, North Allegheny jumped out on Norwin pretty early, hit a big pass play before halftime. Norwin fought back in the second half, but it was kind of too little too late as North Allegheny and Luke Rohan controlled the game on the ground and just kind of kept pace in the second half to hold their lead and get back to the championship game, where it will be Central Catholic and North Allegheny facing off for the 4th straight season in the WPIAL championship game. North Allegheny won 2, Central Catholic won last year. They are the defending champions. This is 7 straight championship game appearances for Central Catholic. They won the head-to-head game earlier this year, 21-6. And Central, this Central team started a little bit slow when they lost to LaSalle. They were working in some, new quarterback, Owen Herrick, who's a sophomore, some new skill position players, but they've really hit their stride, especially since they've got into conference play. They're actually averaging more points per game on offense and holding teams to fewer per game on defense than they were last year when they went to the state championship game. So this Central team is really rounded into form, and is playing their best football right now. And they can just beat you in so many ways, right? They did it on the ground against Cannon Mac in some pretty yucky, rainy, wet, cold conditions on Friday night. But they can beat you through the air. They can beat you on the ground. They've got a stellar defensive front, with D1 commits all over the field on the defensive line. So this is a really good Central Catholic team. North Allegheny's had a bit of a tumultuous season to get back here to the championship game. Credit to head coach Art Walker for buckling down during their bye week and righting the ship a little bit and figuring out what they needed to do to beat Norwin. Art Walker's a great coach who's won a bunch of championships, both in his former gig at Central Catholic and currently at North Allegheny. But I think Central's just got too much talent here.
And the one thing that is puzzling to me is why it just seems like Central Catholic is the one team, in the state that nobody's really talking about as being a state title contender, which I think, my gosh, as well as they played, and obviously you touched on it very well there, Ian. Central Catholic, not only for a WPIAL championship which they've got to be favored for, but boy, getting back to a state championship game, they truly are on track and are playing stellar football to accomplish just that.
Yeah, they are. They're really clicking on all cylinders right now. And like we talked about back in our season preview show when we had Bob Long on, right? That I kind of said, Central's defense was going to have to lead the way for the first few weeks before their offense kind of figured out, who their go-to players were. And now that their offense has figured that out, right? Like I mentioned Chris Black, freshman running back, or actually freshman athlete, kind of do it all. He didn't play a whole lot for most of the season, but then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we're in the playoffs. This kid's like lightning in a bottle. We know he can
Yeah,
run, and we're gonna plug him in against against Cannon McMillan, get him some reps, see what he can do, and he put up 160 plus yards. So I think
yeah.
this was one where he had 12 carries for 70 yards before the playoff game.
Wow.
But Central's got a 2,000-yard passer in Owen Herrick. Multiple receivers, three different receivers with over 300 yards. Three different running backs with over 200 yards. All of them averaging over 6.5 yards a carry. So they can just beat you in so many different ways and just plug so many different guys in. If one thing's not working, they've figured out different ways to do it. And I think the thing that's hard to find stats on, but is so key, is what they do defensively, right? Angelo Pugliano, I think he's a Western Michigan commit. At defensive tackle, he was one of the best players in that game when they played LaSalle. He just was all over the place from the defensive line. He's got 15 and a half tackles for loss,
Mm-hmm.
and what's he got, 9 sacks this year, I think. So that's almost 25 negative plays for him alone. Ashton Blatt, who's a D1 committed outside linebacker, has 11 and a half sacks and like 15 tackles for loss. So they've got just a bunch of guys. And then Colson Gatton, too, who's also a D1 commit. And Roman Thompson's only a junior, and he plays linebacker and running back and is one of the best wrestlers in the state. So you've got these guys on defense for Central Catholic that, anytime you've got a defensive front that has 3 D1 recruits on it, you're in pretty darn good shape. And they've got a couple others on their offensive line too. So, they've really got it in the trenches, and that's going to carry them a long way. Although speaking of D1 recruits, I should shout out to Lincoln Hoke for North Allegheny. He's a Pitt commit, son of former Steeler defensive tackle Chris Hoke.
Okay.
He basically lived in Norwin's backfield. And the reason Norwin's offense couldn't get going is they could not block Lincoln Hoke. He was
Wow.
just all over everything Norwin tried to do in that semifinal game. All right, so let's look at the statewide bracket here. We are down to the final 16 teams in pretty much every classification. I say pretty much because I think there's a team that has a bye in 3A, but this is technically the first round of the state playoffs as well. So I went through my WPIAL Blitz rankings, updated them with last week's results, and figured it would be worth,
Voila.
having them just to kind of give a sense for like, what teams are ranked well from the Blitz rankings. And even Neshaminy from District 1, who, was the 11th seeded team, pulled a couple upsets to get here. Like, they're the 17th ranked team. So they're right in the, kind of top 16 kind of discussion overall. So the teams that are here in 6A are most of the top ranked teams.
Yeah, they truly are. And I think obviously a team, to really take notice, first for the WPIAL is State College. They're going up against Wilkes-Barre. I would guess that they're, going to be favored there. I'm already looking forward to, a State College versus WPIAL champion. There. I think State College's blemishes were Harrisburg and Bishop McDevitt, and I think only by a total of like 6 points. So, I mean, they've really played tough competition very well. They've got a good team up there, the Little Lions. So, I think that's the first thing that the WPIAL champs going to be looking over their shoulder at.
Yeah, definitely looking at State College, in that quarterfinal game. And then in the semifinals, whoever comes out of District 3, which, I mean, you know more about District 3 than I do, but I know you've been talking about Harrisburg all year. Manheim Township is, seems to have had a pretty good year as well. Central York, I know, beat Manheim Township head to head. I don't think Central York played Harrisburg. But I've got to think there's going to be some good games to be had in District 3 as well to set up a semifinal game too.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, Harrisburg just is that team, and Coach Cal Everett just does a great job, coaching in the postseason. And for whatever reason, they can just flip the switch. They played really strong competition early on. The Mid-Penn Conference that they played in throughout the regular season really wasn't up to par this year as it normally is, other than State College, which Harrisburg had to go to overtime, I think double overtime, to beat at State College. But Central York can put up points like, an old pinball machine. I mean, so, Coach Yanchuk and Central York, really going to be tough competition, I think, for Harrisburg for a district championship. So, yeah, a lot of fun there.
Yep. And then over on the eastern side of the bracket, I mean, LaSalle's kind of the powerhouse team to watch now that they've knocked off St. Joe's Prep.
Just watch out for Parkland. Nobody is talking about Parkland. I mean, an undefeated Parkland team beat a good Nazareth team there. Wow. I mean, so many good teams. And now with, the witch being dead, everybody thinks that they've got a chance. And so much of it is mental, okay, in thinking that you can win, and having an opportunity. And that's what I think is great about the 6A tournament this year, is that there's going to be a new champ. There's not going to be there's going to be a new champion in 6A. And that's the excitement that I think just resonates throughout football in Pennsylvania right now.
Yeah. And to your point there, not only a new champion that St. Joe's Prep had won the last 3 state championships, but St. Joe's Prep had been to 9 straight state championship games. So this is the first time in the 6 classification era that St. Joe's Prep isn't going to be in the championship game, right? That, like you said, everyone on that eastern side of the bracket now is kind of like, before it was,
why not us?
Right, exactly. But before it was the behemoth of St. Joe's Prep of, how are we going to get past that? But now, like you said, the door's open, and maybe it is LaSalle that kind of has the advantage. We'll see how it goes, but yeah, I think that was kind of the big one to me too, is that, now that St. Joe's Prep is out, kind of like when Southern Columbia lost in 2A last year, right?
Yeah.
That it was like, hey, the door's open. And yes, Troy, who beat them, went on to win the state title anyways. And maybe, LaSalle does do that, but I think there's an opportunity to be had. And LaSalle's a very good team. And hopefully we get to talk to Bob Long again before the season's over.
Yeah, I'm sure that we will.
Yes. So for folks listening to the show, follow at Bob Long Sports on Twitter. He covers all the LaSalle games. So if you want to get a sneak preview, especially, some of the Central Catholic North Allegheny fans of, what could be waiting for you if you get all the way to the state championship game, check out Bob Long's coverage of LaSalle.
Yeah, clearly.
All right, let's talk 5A, where Pine Richland dominated Shaler. We talked about Khalil Taylor's 4 touchdowns in 4 different ways. Moon gets revenge for their earlier season loss to Penn Trafford, where Penn Trafford beat Moon by a point, 25-24 earlier this year. Moon returns the favor, getting a touchdown with about 3 minutes left to win this game. There was a slight controversy in this one, where they're, on Moon's winning touchdown drive, their quarterback, Andrew Cross, was running the ball, got tackled from behind. The ref said he was down by contact before the ball was fumbled out. Some screenshots or, very apt camera work from photographers on the sideline showed that may not have been the case, but the human element's part of the game. That's a really tough call to make in real time as a referee when you're running down the sidelines. And Penn Trafford started the year by winning a game on a somewhat controversial fumble call on the goal line against Norwin, where they said that the ball was out before Norwin's quarterback crossed the plane. So you win some, you lose some. Penn Trafford did get the ball back with like 3.5 minutes left, so it's not like the call decided the game. Moon did score on that drive, but Penn Trafford did have a chance to come back and weren't able to do it. But at the end of the day, you do kind of feel for the kids that had their season end that way. But this was 2 teams that were very evenly matched. Like I said, they played a 25-24 game earlier this year. Moon scored a game-winning touchdown with 3.5 minutes left in this one. So 2 very evenly matched teams there. But Moon moving on now. Peters Township was in a close one with Bethel Park. Actually, I think it was 21-14 heading into the 4th quarter, and then Peters just turned it on and scored 21 points in the final frame to pull away and win that one. And then Upper St. Clair, Scoop Smith from Woodland Hills returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown, and then Woody High scored again to go up 14-0. And then Upper St. Clair rattled off like 30 straight points in a row and didn't look back from there. Woodland Hills scored a couple more touchdowns late, but Upper St. Clair put on that big run in the middle of the game, and credit to them in a tough environment for not folding when they went down 14-0, but to stick to their game plan, stuck with their running game, and got back into it and wound up beating Woodland Hills. So now setting up 2 semifinal games where we've got 3 teams from the Allegheny 6 conference between Moon, Peters, and Upper St. Clair, and then the defending WPIAL champions in Pine Richland. So let's talk. First, I mentioned the Allegheny 6 conference. So not only do they have 3 of the 4 semifinalists, but this will be the 8th straight year that the Allegheny 6 will have a team go to the WPIAL championship game.
That's great stuff. And you talk all the time about how a regular season or a good conference schedule prepares you for the postseason. This is the perfect example.
Yes. Now, I should note that only Peters Township in 2023 actually won the WPIAL title, but all those other teams did make it that far. So it is worth noting that only one of those 7 previous people that made it actually won. But this is a really good matchup between Peters and Upper St. Clair that we'll talk about in a minute. But first, let's talk about Pine Richland and Moon. So they've met twice before in the playoffs. Pine Richland is kind of the been there, done that team, where this is their 12th straight semifinal. They've reached 7 of the last 8 WPIAL championship games, dating back to when they were in 6A through their time in 5A. Whereas Moon, interestingly enough, has now made the semifinals in every other year, 2021, 2023, 2025. So Moon back in the semis for the 3rd time in 5 years. And this really, I think, Pine Richland is probably, I don't think it's a stretch to say Pine Richland is the best public school team in the state. With all the talent they have, they've got a line loaded with D1 recruits. They've got Khalil Taylor, a 4-star wide receiver who's a former Penn State commit, recent decommit after they fired James Franklin. Their other receiver / defensive back is Jay Timmons, who's the son of former Steeler Lawrence Timmons, who just flipped from Florida State to Ohio State now. They have a junior quarterback in Aaron Obi Strader, who's got a bunch of D1 offers. I mean, this Pine Richland team is just loaded with talent all over the field. And, like Khalil Taylor last week had a kick return, a punt return, a pick six, and a receiving touchdown, right? That it's like, if that kid gets his hands on the ball in any facet of the game, he's a threat to score. So I think Pine Richland, Moon has had a really good year. They've got a D1 recruit at defensive end in Davion Taylor. Andrew Cross has had a nice year as a dual threat quarterback. Moon's got some good, tough players on that team. They're going to grind it out, but overall, I think Pine Richland just has too much athleticism, too much speed on the outside and at defensive back. And I think Pine Richland goes back to the championship game.
Yeah. I mean, clearly it's one that they're favored, and their record speaks for itself.
Yes, it most certainly does. All right, and then the other semifinal between Peters Township and Upper St. Clair. This will be the fourth meeting between these two teams in 2 years. Last year in the regular season, Upper St. Clair won, and Peters Township got them back in the playoffs. This year, Peters Township won the regular season meeting 24-20 on a late fourth quarter touchdown. Upper St. Clair's other loss was to Moon in double overtime. And now they meet again in the playoffs. So we'll see if Upper St. Clair is able to reverse the result, or if the trend continues, right? Peters is in their third straight semifinal. They've been to the championship game the last 2 years. They won one of them, which was their first WPIAL title in school history in 2023. So Upper St. Clair has, the program tradition, but Peters Township has been the powerhouse over the last few years. So it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. Both teams incredibly talented all over the field. This is a great quarterback matchup. Nolan DeLucia for Peters Township against Ethan Hellman from Upper St. Clair. Two kids with big arms that can make throws all over the field. Peters Township has two D1 recruits at defensive end. They also will do a little bit on the receiving side as well, playing tight end and wide receiver. So it's going to be, a really good game. And we talked earlier about, the running backs for these teams. That we talk about the quarterbacks put up a ton of numbers, but Cole Newpaver scored 5 touchdowns last week for Peters Township, and the running back tandem of Curry and Bradbury for Upper St. Clair scored 4 touchdowns between the two of them, and each had over 100 rushing yards. So, I mentioned Peters Township's defensive ends, Lucas Shanafelt and Reston Lehman. One of them's going to Pitt, one of them's going to Stanford. So this is just an all-around great matchup, and this one could go either way. Like, this is a coin flip.
See, I don't think it's a coin flip. I think Peters is definitely favored. I think that they've got the short term. You touched on it. This is their third straight semifinal. They reached the last 2 WPIAL finals. I mean, they've really got the momentum with this group of players. I think that I think that they're favored, and I think that they'll win handily.
Okay. All right.
Bold statement.
I don't know if it's a bold statement, but I like it. It's I think that last year in the playoffs it was 7-3 that Peters won. And then so they've played multiple close games over the last few years. I think these are two pretty evenly matched teams. Maybe Peters does pull away. They do have the best defense in the classification, holding opponents to just 7 points a game. And both of these teams, to beat them, you have to play a full 48 minutes,
sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
This is not one where I don't think either team's going to be able to just coast to victory, right? If one of them wins, they might pull away late in the second half, but it could be a situation like last week with Peters and Bethel Park where, Peters wound up winning 42-14, but 21 of those points came in the fourth quarter. So, yeah.
This recent group of Peters players has work left. Okay.
Yes.
Their goals are well beyond WPIAL championships with this group of guys. And, that's what's motivating this group, I think, Peters, into things beyond the WPIAL championship. But that's just me.
Well, and Peters has played Pine Richland in the last 2 WPIAL title games, so we could get a rubber match here because they've split them.
I know. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Let's just say we're not going to get ahead of ourselves,
Right.
okay? But Peters has their sights really set on getting beyond a WPIAL title.
Yes. So let's talk about what happens
Woo!
beyond the WPIAL, where once
Beyond the
again
WPIAL.
we're in the
that's the new segment. You just coined the phrase beyond the WPIAL.
There we go. So looking beyond the WPIAL champion will enter the statewide bracket. They're on the top left quadrant. So they'll play the District 3 champion in the state semifinal. And so a little bit of news here was that Exeter knocked off Conestoga Valley, I saw.
Yeah.
But now they have to play Bishop McDevitt, who's the defending champions.
Yeah, and that's who Exeter got pummeled by last year in the District 3 5A championship game. They're meeting, excuse me, in a semifinal this week. And New Oxford and Solanco, both good teams. Solanco really on a high from the Lancaster Lebanon League. New Oxford finally won a playoff game. They had consecutive undefeated seasons and had lost their first playoff game, so they got the monkey off their back by beating Spring Grove last week. I think Solanco is maybe a dark horse here to get to the District 3 championship game against McDevitt, but there's nobody close in District 3 to Bishop McDevitt in 5A.
And then
so we'll just leave that there. And then I really like everybody, that bottom bracket game of Chester and Westchester Ruston, that is just gonna be fabulous. And 2 powerhouse teams, Westchester Ruston, a little bit more of a history than Chester, but Chester has really come on the last 3-4 seasons here. Whoever wins out of there, that's who I like coming out of that lower bracket between Chester and Westchester Ruston. That's who I like coming out of that to even make it to the state semifinal.
Okay, and then where they'll probably have to play Roman Catholic, who was the runners-up last year.
Yeah, I would guess that would be the case. Roman is a very talented group of players.
Yeah. All right, so moving on to 4A, where we had semifinals. McKeesport all over Thomas Jefferson in what was a rematch of last year's championship game. McKeesport did it on defense with 3 interceptions. We already talked about Keemon Spell in our Players of the Week segment. 331 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns, showing why he is the top-ranked running back recruit in the state for next year's class, for the class of current juniors. And then Aliquippa did it on defense against Newcastle, shutting them out 14-0. JJ Work running for 176 yards and a touchdown, but also shout out to Marcus Council, their Yale committed quarterback, who came back last week. We talked about it from what everyone thought was a season-ending injury. He only attempted a handful of passes, but completed a few of them, really kept Aliquippa able to move the ball down the field a little bit. And this was a 0-0 game at halftime, and Aliquippa came up big when they needed to.
Yeah, I tell you what, that McKeesport win was so impressive to me. And Aliquippa, like you said, never pick against them.
I've been telling you for years. What, this is 6 years we're doing the show? I'm saying never pick against Aliquippa, right?
It's like, that's okay. I love
7 seed, need the wild card to get in. Doesn't matter. Back in the championship game.
Doesn't matter.
Yep. So, Aliquippa with their both teams here enter the championship game with 3 losses. McKeesport's losses all came without Keemon Spell in the lineup when he was injured earlier this year. Aliquippa lost some games in the middle of the year. They lost a non-conference game to Avonworth. And so this is, a championship matchup that's so rich in tradition, right?
Wait, go ahead. I just want to go ahead. No, well, I'll finish at the end there. I don't want to interrupt you.
All right. So Aliquippa had made 16 straight WPIAL title games until they lost in the semifinals last year. McKeesport's been to the last 2 WPIAL championship games. Aliquippa is 3-0 against McKeesport in the playoffs, including in a couple championship games, or at least one championship game in 2023. This is just a matchup between these two schools that have so much tradition between them. Multiple WPIAL championships. Aliquippa's got more WPIAL championships than anyone else, with 20. McKeesport's won multiple WPIAL and state titles. Kind of hard to believe, though, a school with as much history, tradition, and consistent good talent as McKeesport hasn't won a WPIAL title since 2005. But let's not forget, they were playing in Quad A up until the end of the 4 classification era, when they finally moved down to 5A, and then down to 4A in 2020. So I think this is a McKeesport bunch that everything's coming together for them. They've got a junior in Keemon Spell, who's an absolute star at running back, and that triple option is so hard to defend, especially when you only have 1 week to prepare for it. And they're really good on the defensive side of the ball too. This is a really, really good McKeesport team with just an all-around star player. And Aliquip has had a great season. Credit to them. I think this is one of the most impressive playoff runs that they've made, because it wasn't really expected of them, right? It was kind of like, hey, it's great they made the playoffs and continued their playoff streak to 30 straight years, but now they've pulled 2 upsets as the number 7 seed to get here to the championship game. And I think McKeesport, I think at the end of the day, with Keemon Spell, just has a little more than Aliquippa has. But I think, to me, this matchup is so much more about the tradition that's brought these two schools to this point, not just this season, but we talked about the all-time wins list last week, right?
Yeah.
Aliquippa got their 799th win, so they could become the first WPIAL team and just the 5th team in Pennsylvania to win 800 games as a program. And for little old Aliquippa, that's a 1A, 2A size school that got forced up to 4A, tried to get forced up to 5A. They just keep winning and keep finding ways to do it. And McKeesport, 6th place all time on the WPIAL wins list at 735 wins. I mean, this is 1,500 plus wins between these two schools. So when I say, this is such a tradition rich game, it's not just these two schools playing in these groups of players, but it's everyone that came before them too, and how much history these two programs have.
They have a lot of history. It still boils down to the team that's out there, on the field that particular game. You touched on it there. They lost the 3 games that Spell was hurt. Somehow, some way, Aliquip is going to take him out of the game, and they're going to win.
Oh, Bruce is listening to my never pick against Aliquippa. So,
no, but it's a seems to be a pretty simple formula to beat McKeesport, and that is sell out against Spell. And I gotta believe Coach Coach is going to get that done there in Aliquippa, yeah. Coach Warfield. And
yeah. And I mean, Coach Warfield's a great coach. I mean, getting back to the WPIAL championship game again. The other thing I think I'll mention is, you remember last year we had Coach Casper from Mars on the show. Mm-hmm. After they upset Montour in the first round of the playoffs, and they were set to play McKeesport. And I keep going back to what he mentioned about Keemon Spell. And he said, you can watch film, because Mars had played McKeesport in the regular season. And he said, you can watch film on McKeesport. You can teach your guys how to defend the option, what the reads are, what the holes are you have to get in, what angles you need to take to the ball. But when you get out there on the field and you have a kid as talented and as fast and with as much burst as Keemon Spell has, you can take absolutely the right angle and miss him by 2 or 3 yards, because, he's just that quick in those short areas. And some of those highlights against Thomas Jefferson were, the 97-yard touchdown run, he looked bottled up behind the line, but they couldn't get him on the ground. And all of a sudden he bounces it to the outside and is gone down the sideline. So yeah. I think it's one thing to be able to defend the triple option, because you don't see it that much, so you don't have practice against it. It's hard to mimic it for a scout team that's never done it. And it's even harder when you have a kid that has as much athleticism as Kevon Spell does and is as fast as he is, especially, and can make those quick cuts and is so hard to bring down, right? That he's got that, he's the number one running back recruit in the state for a reason. That, it's one thing to get there, it's another thing to get him on the ground. And sometimes you could take the perfect angle and not get there because he's just that much faster.
Yeah. Well, like I said,
So,
I got to believe that Aliquip is going to devise that plan to take him out of the game. So,
I think
and
that,
because McKeesport has already telegraphed what can beat them, and that is, take him out of the game. So,
yeah.
all right.
Well, I think the one other thing that will make a difference here is because the 6A and 4A championships are this weekend, they're being played at Pine Richland High School. And next week's championship games are all at Acrisure Stadium, formerly known as Heinz Field, right? Which has grass and is one of the worst playing surfaces in the NFL. But this week's games are at Pine Richland, which is turf.
Yeah.
So these players are going to be able to play a lot faster on turf than they would on the terrible grass surface at Acrisure Stadium.
I ask every coach that question, okay? Playing on grass, playing on turf, whatever like that. They give it no credence whatsoever that a guy's going to play faster on turf than he will grass. Now, do I believe what you just said? Yes, but there isn't any one coach that I've talked to in all the years that I've been doing this that agrees with that. So just to let you know.
Yeah. I mean, I think there is something to be said for, as Coach Rizzo said, when we interviewed him at the beginning of the show, there's something to be said for, getting to play in the Steelers Stadium, and it's great that they host WPIAL championship games and all that. But I do think, I mean, I've seen so many incredibly talented teams that play all year on turf and then just get bogged down when they go to Heinz Field on the grass.
Look, they practice. I mean, the majority of even the teams that play on turf don't practice on turf, okay? Because they have one turf field, all right? You know what that turf field's being used for? Field hockey, soccer, the other sports. They don't get to practice on it. They're practicing on grass. So just to let you know, I mean, that's why none of the coaches sign up for that, because the minute that they do, it's this mental block or what have you. Logic tells you otherwise, but they don't. The vast majority of teams that have turf aren't practicing on it. So here we go. Next.
All right.
Enough fun.
Yeah.
How did we digress to that? I have no idea.
A good discussion. So now we've got Badges news from the East here, because this is getting into, there's some 4A news here. We talked a little bit about the 5As, but I want to give you a chance to talk about some of these ones as well.
Yeah. I tell you what, Cardinal O'Hara beating Bonner, not a surprise, but as kind of, spankingly as they did, kind of wakes up the echoes for them. The Exeter win over Conestoga, that helped Exeter for one game. Riley Martinez is a pretty talented quarterback, came back for Exeter in that game and showed what he was all about. He's been hurt a lot of times, a lot of this year, and kind of repaid Conestoga for beating Exeter, a little bit earlier. But they're just walking into the buzzsaw called Bishop McDevitt, the next game. So that's a tough one. And then Bishop Shanahan over Pope John Paul II. That really was a surprise to me. PJP 2, I really picked them to be one of the, the top ones in 4A in the state. But Shanahan, I tell you what, they can rise up to. I saw them beat a 6A team last year in Downingtown West. So that's a good one there. And then Berwick going down. That was really a shocker. They were undefeated going into that game, but Scranton Prep, always really good quality. And now, they're basically staking their claim to be one of the top teams in the 3A tournament, coming up, and then not appearing on this page. The number one team in the state, Twin Valley, rolled. That was my broadcast game last week, and they're as advertised. I didn't see any weakness in Twin Valley whatsoever. Very physical team. Reminded me a lot of a Thomas Jefferson team, quite honestly.
Yeah, so I figured that moving to the bracket here, Twin Valley in the upper left in District 3, beating West Perry there, and now getting West York, and on the top half, Susquehanna Township against Wyomissing. The winner of District 3 will play either the WPIAL champion or the Oil City Punxsutawney winner in the semifinals. So that's definitely one to keep an eye on for WPIAL fans as well, because whoever wins between McKeesport and Aliquippa has to play either Oil City or Punxsy, and then the winner of that one plays the District 3 champion. And I do want to mention, actually, just real quick here, I was updating my spreadsheet on state playoff history today, and Punxsutawney, this is the first time they've appeared in a round of 16 in a statewide bracket. So,
Wow.
yeah, they've been in some of these kind of early round qualifiers before, but the formal state bracket that starts with the round of 16, there were two newcomers this year. One was Wilkes-Barre, which was a merger of three other schools, which had all made it previously, and
Sure.
the other is Punxsutawney. So congratulations to Punxsutawney for getting this far into the bracket for the first time ever.
Yeah, and on the other side there too, I thought Shamokin had a really nice win over Jersey Shore. Um, that and they're going to play Bellefonte there, and
The WPIAL Blitz rankings does not look too highly on Bellefonte.
yeah, correct. But Shamokin is a team to keep an eye on. But yeah, I mean, all four teams in the District 3 bracket are ranked in the top 10. I mean, that's going to be a knockdown drag out there. At Twin Valley West York, this game this week is going to be really tough. And then Weil and Susquehanna Township, and that is just talk about a clash of styles. I mean, I think that is the most intriguing matchup in 4A this week, is that traditional style of Wyomissing area versus Susquehanna Township out of the Mid-Penn Conference. Coach Joe Heaton has done a tremendous job with Susquehanna Township this year, and they can play any style of game you want, and a lot of speed, a lot of athleticism. So gonna be fun, this a 4A tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this one, especially with Bonner Prendy going down, who is the defending champions, right? This one seems pretty wide open, that like there's a path forward for almost any team here to get to and contend for a state title. I would think. I mean, probably Cardinal O'Hara having knocked off Bonner Prendy out of the Philadelphia Catholic League, but like they're going to have to play either Bishop Shanahan or North Pocono, and then Bethlehem Catholic's been playing well. Southern Lehigh won that District 11 championship last year, so
Yeah.
there's a lot of possibilities here, and like you said, kind of any one of those four out of District 3 could make it to the semifinals.
Yeah.
So
It's going to be a lot of fun.
yeah. All right, so let's talk 3A, where Avonworth dominated Freeport. Dimitri Valsaris ran for 111 yards and 4 touchdowns. North Catholic and Elizabeth Forward got into a shootout. We talked about Joey Felitsky's numbers. He hooked up with wide receiver Riker Kennedy for 3 touchdowns. But one of the awesome things about North's offense is they have like 4 different receivers that they can go to, spread the ball around, and they can run the ball. So North is a tough team to be able to defend. Elizabeth Forward's dual threat quarterback, Ryan Messina, capped off his fantastic career with a 4 touchdown performance, did pretty much everything he could to keep his team in the game. But at the end of the day, North does get revenge for that game last year. Amani Christian all over Hopewell. Gabe Jenkins, their star quarterback, had 4 total touchdowns. Amani put up 497 rushing yards against Hopewell's defense. And then they'll face Central Valley, who put up 285 against a pretty good Highlands defense. Ethan Shearer ran for a $141 and a touchdown, who's Central Valley's kind of feature back, but they rotate a bunch of guys through as well. So looking at the semifinals here, we've got 3 teams out of the Western Hills Conference, which we've talked about all year as being one of the best: Avonworth, North Catholic, and Central Valley, and then an undefeated Amani Christian team. So this is a really good slate of semifinal games just to get to Acrisure Stadium for the WPIAL championship game. So let's start with the Avonworth North Catholic game, where Avonworth, being in their 6th semifinal in the last 7 seasons, they've been to the last 3 WPIAL title games. They are the defending WPIAL champions, brought back pretty much everyone from that team that went to the state title game and lost in overtime last year. So this is an absolutely loaded Avonworth team, between Carson Bellinger at quarterback, Luca Neal is kind of the slot back, Dimitri Valsaris at running back, Peter Bonnet, their D1 recruit on the offensive line. So North Catholic's got their work cut out for them here. I'm obviously a little biased as a North Catholic alum, but this is a really good Avonworth team.
Yeah, it really is. I
It's
mean, on paper, I mean, just in the way that you described them, I mean, and you look at the comparison just on paper there. Um, there's a lot more writing under the Avonworth name than the North Catholic name, but they are just. It's hard to imagine that this team is better than the team that made it to the state championship game last year. But man, I think that they are, and I think that they are truly on a mission. And so, I won't go beyond that. We'll talk, even more about that down the road. So.
Yeah, and we had Coach John Core from Avonworth on earlier this year, and just a great program that he's built there over the years at Avonworth, and having kind of worked their way up as a growing population from being in single A all the way up to 3A now. And I think one of the other things too, and it often gets overlooked, but North Catholic is averaging 46 points a game basically, right? And Avonworth held them to 10 points the first time they met. So I think, it's hard to talk about defense because, defense doesn't get as much press as offense. You don't really find as many numbers for defense. Statistics are harder to find, but I think what Avonworth does defensively, the way they're able, to get after the quarterback, to rush the passer, and the way they play defense. I mean, Avonworth went out and beat Aliquippa and Thomas Jefferson this year. Like, let's not forget that this Avonworth team, they're 11-0 with 2 wins over 4A semifinalists.
Well, that's why that was the question. That was why I asked the question of Coach Rizzo about the game plan. Like, you put together the game plan, whatever like that. How long do you go with a game plan against a team like this before you have to try something else? I mean, because everybody's tried this against Avonworth and it hasn't worked. I mean, no. So how long do you stick with that before? All right, we got to try some, or plan B. All right, not that, or try something. Like go to the bottom of the playbook and it's like halfback option passes and double reverses, because sometimes you just have to do that. How long you wait, I think, is directly proportional to whether you have an opportunity to come back or not and win the game. And I think the longer you go with a game plan against a team like Avonworth or Amani, the more trouble that you're in. I think that you've got to adjust to what's being thrown at you out on the field at that particular time, because both teams are so very talented.
They are.
But that's just me.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And I think, one of the challenges for North here is, what can they do to slow Avonworth's offense down defensively? But if North wins this game, it's not going to be in a defensive struggle. They're going to have to do it in a shootout, right?
Yep. Right. But they've done. But see, they have proven the last couple of weeks, but they scored over 50 points, right? The last consecutive weeks.
Yes.
In their wins. So, I mean, just go out there. I mean, go out there and try and outscore them. I mean, you're certainly not going to out defend them. So just start winging it around the yard. You have the talented guys. I'd like to see Coach Rizzo just like from the opening bell to just start throwing it deep. And when you really make them defend the whole field, that will open up the running game.
It does. And I loved what he said about, simplifying things and getting his players to be able to play without thinking, right? Because when you think, you play slower, and you just got to play naturally. And going out there and playing with your hair on fire, like he talked about. And I love hearing that, because it's one of those things where it's like he wants to give his players the freedom to just go play, right? And just enjoy themselves for 48 minutes, and just go compete and kind of leave it all out there on the field, right? That
Yeah,
you're not
yeah.
going to come into a WPIAL semifinal with a conservative game plan. You're gonna, if you're gonna go beat the defending WPIAL champs, you want to give it
You
everything
got
you've got.
you right. Correct. It just let her rip.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's talk about the other semifinal now, and this one, oh boy, I mean this one's going to get won in the trenches, because both of these teams like to run the ball. Now, Amani Christian has a dual threat quarterback in Gabe Jenkins, who made the 1,000 club, and multiple D1 recruits all over the field. I think it's also worth mentioning for Amani that they've got two outside linebacker edge rushers in Will Gorman and DeJuan Craighead, who are both D1 recruits. And I don't know how much Central Valley is going to throw the ball. Braddock Ambrose has been a decent quarterback this year, but they've been able to control the game a lot with their running game and having multiple running backs. So, I mean, both of these teams primarily want to run the ball and kind of can throw the ball as an aside. Now, Amani's got athletes all over the field between Gabe Jenkins and David Davis, and a bunch of other highly touted recruits they have on that team. But I think at the end of the day, I think Amani has too much athleticism for Central Valley, and I think athleticism is just gonna rule the day.
And that's how Central Valley won their 3A championships is the athleticism that they had on their squad. Now they're facing a
Yeah,
team that has more athleticism than I think Central Valley had on their championship teams. But that's just me.
very, very possible. Yeah, I mean, Amani's just loaded, and I think to stop Amani, I don't know if there's a good way to stop them, right? Like they're scoring 48 points a game, and they've got a really good defense. But I'll say historically, right, like Avonworth knocked off Amani in the semifinals last year. And when Amani's gotten tripped up in the playoffs, it's been a combination of two things. It's been penalties and turnovers being one of them, that they just, commit penalties, commit turnovers. But the other thing is teams that have been able to just fundamentally defend the run and clog things up on the line of scrimmage, right? Like Avonworth beat them in a defensive struggle last year. They did not beat Amani in a shootout. I don't think you can beat Amani in a shootout. I think you have to find a way to slow down their offense to be able to beat them.
Yeah, fair enough. And
But I don't know if that's possible, right?
Coach Lyons in Central Valley. I mean, that he can draw it up in the rubber pellets.
Yeah. Oh, Coach Lyons is fantastic. So yeah, I definitely think that Central Valley, they're gonna have to figure out a way with their front seven on defense to slow down Amani's running game, because that's where it all starts for Amani.
Yep.
All right, so let's talk about the statewide bracket. So the WPIAL champion will enter in the semifinals in the top left of the bracket. And this is the one where there is a team that gets a bye. So Newman Goretti gets a bye through the round of 16, and they'll face the District 3 champion in the I guess quarterfinals on that side.
Yeah, Berks Catholic and Trinity. Berks Catholic, a really fine season. Same thing with Trinity. Um, that's going to be a very interesting matchup for the District 3 championship, which is this Friday. But still, I think that the matchup that everybody's watching is out of District 11. Who's going to come out between Notre Dame Green Pond and Northwestern Lehigh? That is, I think, the team that I would view to be the favorite to come out of the traditional Eastern side of the bracket. You know, Northwestern Lehigh, one is defending champion, and I mean, their team is at least as good as their championship team last year, which is hard to imagine. Um, and then, clearly, I think that the WPIAL champion is just, that everybody in the bottom bracket is, just kind of. I mean, Amani and Avonworth are clearly head and shoulders above the teams down at the bottom of the bracket on the western side, in my view.
Yeah, I think Hickory out of District 10's got a nice team. Penn Cambria gave Avonworth a bit of a game last year in the semifinals, but I think you're right. I think that the WPIAL championship game is going to be a tougher game to win than the state semifinal game.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep. And you mentioned Northwestern Lehigh, who's the defending state champs against Notre Dame Green Pond. Yeah, I think that's a really good one as well. That I think that's the beyond the WPIAL game to watch this week is
Beyond
that
the
one.
WPIAL.
Beyond the
Yeah.
right. If we're beyond the WPIAL in any classification, that would be my game to watch would be the Notre Dame Northwestern Lehigh
Yeah.
game.
Yeah, good stuff.
So we'll see. In this one also, the WPIAL has done very well in 3A over the years. That this is the 10th year of the sixth classification era. The WPIAL's put a team in the championship game all 9 previous seasons, and they've only lost it twice. One was Avonworth in overtime last year, or double overtime, right? It was double
Yeah.
overtime. And then the other one,
I think it was only single overtime.
okay,
I don't know,
it
but
was in overtime.
Yeah.
And then the other one was Central Valley when they lost to Wyoming area and blew a 14-0 lead in the fourth quarter. So,
Yeah.
it's the 2 times the WPIAL's lost 3A, it's been very, very close. So, they've won some close ones too, right? Like, Bell Vernon the first time needed to stop Newman Goretti on the goal line.
Yeah,
to win
right. That
one,
was
but
really controversial ending there.
yeah, but they still have pulled it off. So, at the end of the day, I think you're right. I think it's the WPIAL champion is probably the favorite on the west side of the bracket, and then we'll see. I don't know how good Goretti is this year, but Notre Dame, Green Pond, Northwestern Lehigh, probably going to be favored over whoever they face next week.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right, so let's talk about 2A now, where Seton LaSalle was all over Mohawk with their running game. Washington dominated South Allegheny. South Allegheny, who started the year 9-0, loses their final 2 of their final 3, I guess. So to Steel Valley and then to Washington. So not quite the end of the season that South Allegheny was hoping for. Washington now into the semifinals against Seton LaSalle, who they just faced in week 9. Western Beaver beating Apollo Ridge, and Steel Valley just running all over Elwood City. Duron Barksdale, the Pitt commit, running for 5 touchdowns. And Western Beavers, Wyatt Sparbani, 3 touchdowns. Their freshman quarterback, Amari Marshall, ran for 2 touchdowns. So going to be a lot of running here in these 2 semifinal matchups. A conference rematch between Steel Valley and Washington, and then for the 3rd straight season, Western Beaver and Steel Valley meeting in the playoffs as well. So some recent history between those 2. Seton LaSalle beat Washington in week 9, 27-14. Seton was the Century Conference champions. And they've got a good roster. They've got a couple D1 recruits at outside linebacker between Aaron Loritz and Will Martin. One of them's going to Duquesne. I think the other one's going to Monmouth. So kind of FCS level players. But Kia Jones, their quarterback, has stepped in from midseason and provided them with a dual threat option. Kamar Freeman, their running back, has run all over the place this season. This was a Seton team that lost a lot of players to transfers and graduation and whatnot from the team that went to the WPIAL finals last year, but It took them a little while to round into form. Their one loss was to North Catholic back in week 0, but once they kind of figured things out offensively, this team is clicking on all cylinders right now. So this is a really good Seton LaSalle squad. And Washington has some talented playmakers all over the field. Tristan Reed, their dual threat quarterback, Javon Woods at running back. Some other good players too. But at the end of the day, I think Seton's done it once against Washington. I think Seton's just too much for Washington. But Washington has the talent to give Seton a game. But I think at the end of the day, Seton, after losing the championship game last year, is really on a mission to get back there and win it this year.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. But Washington has really had a fine season as well. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I think, quite honestly, I think it's a real toss-up. Sense by your summation there that Seton would be, significantly favored, but I think it's really a toss-up.
Yeah, and it was a 2 touchdown game the last time they played. So and 2 touchdowns also can kind of mean like a fumble here or a turnover there, penalty here or there can turn the tide, right? And
Hmm.
I was talking with someone over the weekend about how um, you know, uh, something as simple as a holding penalty in high school football like just kills a drive, right? Because like what high school team is going to be able to convert 1st and 20, right? That
Yeah.
you
Well,
get one holding penalty.
even if it's later I think anytime a holding penalty comes on third down, is the death knell to that drive
Yeah.
for that team. That it's really hard to recover, you know, uh, from a holding penalty or a major penalty on third down.
Right. So I do think, the last time these two teams played, it was a close enough game that you could say, okay, I could see a path forward for Washington. If they get a couple bounces to go their way, right? I do think Seton is better overall, but you never know. That's why they play the game, right?
Yep.
All right. And then the other one, like I mentioned, recent history here with Steel Valley having knocked out Western Beaver in the quarterfinals the last 2 years, facing off in the semifinals this year. Um, Western Beaver's done some really nice things this year. Their starting quarterback transferred out, went to a prep academy, and they really had to focus on the ground game. Wyatt Sparbani at running back, Amari Marshall, their freshman quarterback, both running for over 1,000 yards this year. But Steel Valley's got Deron Barksdale, a Pitt commit at running back, and his older brother also went to Steel Valley. And this is the last year of the Barksdale brothers. Donald Barksdale's off in college now. Deron's a senior. So I think they want to. Their family's been so big in Steel Valley athletics for so long that I think trying to go out and give it everything they have. And Deron Barksdale's not been quiet about it, right? Like he'll tweet things like, "I'm gonna go put on a show and then go score 5 touchdowns," right? Like he did that. He did that before the South Allegheny game. He's like, "Watch me, I'm gonna go put on a show," and then he went and scored 5 touchdowns at like 250 yards rushing. It's like, okay, he backs it up though, right? Like he's a kid that's talented enough to say something like that and then go back it up. And I think that Steel Valley is just going to be too much,
Way too
especially
much.
especially with what they have on the defensive side of the
Yeah.
ball.
Yeah. Even though, their record is 8-3, I think that they're going to be way too much.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think Steel Valley learned some lessons in those losses about what they were doing wrong and have fixed some of those things. And I think just the familiarity, right? This is Steel Valley's 5th straight semifinal, and Western Beaver hasn't been this deep in the playoffs since 1995.
Yeah.
So, this is a great run for Western Beaver, conference champions, making their first semis in 30 years. But I think at the end of the day, Steel Valley, just the familiarity with being here and knowing what it takes to get to the WPIAL championship game and to try and go win it. I think Deron Barksdale is going to dominate this game.
Yeah.
All right. So looking statewide now, beyond the WPIAL is on the lower
Beyond the
left
whip.
of the bracket, where the WPIAL champion will face either the District 6 champion, which is being played between Bishop McCourt and Richland this week, and then the District 9 champion, Karn City, taking on Farrell out of District 10, which I think that should be a pretty good matchup. Farrell's always been a strong program, and Karn City actually beat Punxsutawney, who we talked about back in 4A earlier this year. So Karn City against Farrell would probably be one of my beyond the WPIAL games to watch on the left side of the bracket. But I think that Southern Columbia Troy one is the really big one to watch on the eastern side, just because Troy, being the defending state champions, knocked off Southern Columbia last year, but Southern Columbia seems to be back in the driver's seat as the powerhouse again.
What a fascinating matchup. I mean, you couldn't write a Hollywood script like this. Troy, Southern Columbia facing off, Southern Columbia trying to reassert its dominance against the defending state champion. That just, that's good stuff. You can't make that stuff up. And but also, I mean, I think that I've talked about Schuylkill Haven all year. I mean, that's another team that scores touchdowns and points like playing a pinball machine. Uh, Coach Mike Farr, really great guy. Really interested to see. I think if they can get past Williams Valley, I think that they've got, a good shot to get, obviously to get to the semifinal there. But I still like on the eastern side there, I like the winner of Southern Columbia Troy to face the Western champion in the state championship game.
Yeah, and last year it was Central Clarion out of District 9 that made it to the state championship
Yeah.
game out of the West. So, I do think this is a Western side that, I don't know, it's hard to predict when these teams get together because there's not a lot of, inter-district games that get
No,
played, right? That,
there aren't.
I have no idea how good Bishop McCourt is or how good, um, I mean, I've obviously Karn City beat Punxsutawney. I've kept up on Farrell because they're kind of just outside the WPIAL. They're relatively close by. Our buddy Bob Greenberg out of Mercer County covers them very well. So I think that, I kind of have a sense for Farrell being pretty good, but the WPIAL champion, whoever it is going to have a decently tough semifinal probably before they even get to the state championship game.
Yeah, totally agree.
All right. And finally, in 1A, where Fort Cherry ran all over Neshannock, Eli Salvini, 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. Matt Seg, 131 yards and 2 touchdowns. They just keep running up the stats, and Fort Cherry continuing to just run the ball and not need to throw very much. So they will continue on. Laurel, their all-around star, Colton Carlson, did it through the air, on the ground, receiving, a little bit of everything. He's done that for them all year. Laurel also has a school record-setting quarterback as well in Lucas Santini. And Laurel had traditionally been a very run-heavy team. So for Laurel to have a quarterback that broke the school record for passing yards is definitely noteworthy, that they can be multiple now heading into the deep in the season. Clairton got everything they could handle from Jeanette, man. Shout out to these Jeanette kids. They got beat 53-0 early in the season by Clairton and came back, and Kimon Brown, 3 passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. Jace Powell, 2 receiving touchdowns. These kids left it all out there on the field.
Yeah, that was the say what game for me in the state of Pennsylvania last week.
Yeah, it was definitely one where it was surprising in the first quarter when, Jeanette kicked the field goal. It was like, oh, Clairton gave up points. Haha, they're up, I think it was 8-3 or something like that. And then Jeanette just kept scoring. Jeanette had a lead at one point in the game. It's like, holy cow, this Jeanette team's not going away. They just, every time, blow for blow, back and forth. But, when you get 2 rival schools together that have played each other so often over the years, not just in conference play, but I mean, this was the 5th time they'd met in the playoffs also. So when you get teams that have that level of familiarity with each other, and 5th time meeting in the playoffs in the last 10 years, so pretty often that they've played each other, there's a level of familiarity there. And Clairton's sophomore Brandon Murphy was the one who sealed the game. This kid, remember this name? He's a sophomore defensive end, and he's been doing a little bit on offense for them too, between running the ball, playing receiver a little bit. I think he might still even be their leading receiver. But this kid's got a couple D1 offers, and is just a overall really, really good player. I was trying to look up his stats real quick.
And who is that?
Brandon Murphy,
Okay.
sophomore from Clairton, 6'1", 185, defensive end, and slash outside linebacker, and he plays some receiver, running back. He's got 16 D1 offers already. So for a 1A size school, Clairton just keeps churning these guys out. Had the game sealing interception. Keep an eye on Brandon Murphy. And then Bishop Canavan, we talked about them at the top of the show with DeMar Olds moving to quarterback in the postseason. Meonte Mott had a great game on the ground too. They were all over Frazier from the get-go. So this will set up three conference champions between Fort Cherry, Laurel, and Clairton, and then Bishop Canavan, who was second in the Black Hills Conference, where Fort Cherry won it, in the semifinals. So we'll start with Fort Cherry, the two-time defending WPIAL champions in their third straight semifinal. They are, the powerhouse team in the WPIAL right now. They are the team to beat with Matt Seg at quarterback. Laurel, they're in their first semifinal since 2009. They put together a really nice season, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Yes, they have.
And Laurel's only loss was against Bishop Canavan, I should mention. So, Laurel has played well. They've beaten a number of 2A programs early in the year from Lawrence County. So shout out to our friends at the Lawrence County Sports Network as well, who does a great job covering all the schools up there. Fort Cherry and Laurel. Fort Cherry has the recent history. Fort Cherry has the experience here. But this is a great run to the semifinals for Laurel. But I think at the end of the day, Matt Seg and Fort Cherry are just going to be too much. And big time players make big time plays in big time games. We saw that last year when Matt Seg delivered the WPIAL championship for Fort Cherry with making that touchdown pass to beat Clairton with less than a minute left. And I can't see them getting knocked out before the WPIAL title game.
Not going to happen. Next.
Next is a rematch of a semifinal game that happened last year between Clairton and Bishop Canavan. And this one now went from what I had as a kind of presumed result of Clairton winning to, oh, maybe Clairton's vulnerable with what Jeanette did to them last week and how close Jeanette played them, right? And Bishop Canavan now with DeMar Olds playing quarterback, and what Kimon Brown was able to do as a dual threat quarterback, like, Canavan suddenly now, they've got that win over Laurel. They beat Steel Valley on the road earlier this year. That I think Canavan is a team that potentially, has a chance to give Clairton another battle here. And
Yeah.
I thought for almost all year it was just Clairton and Fort Cherry, were the two teams presumed to get back to the championship game. But Canavan's got some big time players. Canavan's 3 losses were to Clarkson North out of Canada. They lost to Seton LaSalle, and they lost to Fort Cherry, and Clairton lost to Amani Christian. So like both of these teams have had great years and just played really well against 1A competition. Clairton's defense did give up points this past week, which was the first time since week 0. So they've pitched.
They are human.
They are human. They've pitched 9 shutouts this year. So I think getting up early in this game is big for Clairton. That Clairton really needs to let their defense be able to control the game. If they can shut down Canavan's running game, I think Clairton will win the game. But I think if DeMar Olds and Meonte Mott are making noise on the ground, then that's going to open up a lot of other things through the passing game. And Clairton's got a great defensive backfield with Dante Wright and Michael Ruffin and Terrace Wooding and Brandon Murphy kind of playing all over the place, who I mentioned earlier. Darren Pinston at linebacker. They've just got so much talent on that team. And Jeff Thompson playing quarterback now. Thompson was hurt last year in the WPIAL championship game, so they couldn't throw the ball a whole lot, but they can throw the ball now. So I think this is one where I hope the weather's good on Friday night and it's not a slop fest, because both of these teams can really put points on the board and are two talented offenses, and you want to see good on good, right? You want to see strength on strength. You want to see two good teams go head to head.
Yeah, no, you do.
All right, and then in the statewide bracket, the WPIAL Blitz rankings still really like Belmont Charter out of District 12.
Yeah.
And I think they're a team that's kind of been slept on a little bit, somewhat in the from the PennLive rankings. But here, the WPIAL champion on the top left of the bracket will enter in the semifinals. So they'll play either the District 10 or District 9 champion. Wilmington's been the powerhouse in District 10 this year. And then out of District 9, you've got Port Allegheny, who won the District 9 title and made it to the state championship last year, against Red Bank Valley, who did the same thing a couple years back. So two teams in Port Allegheny and Red Bank Valley who have kind of been the two dominant forces in District 9 going head to head. So that's a game that I've got my eye
that's
on.
so important, that you've been there before. Okay. And that is that can't be discounted. We talk about that, a lot, especially when you get to this point in the season. But there's a logical progression in how you become. It's like they talk about it all the time. You have to learn how to win, and you learn how to win by making it deep, by making deep playoff runs like these teams are doing.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And then on the quote unquote eastern side of the bracket, we also have Bishop Guilfoyle, the defending state champions out of District 6, playing in the District 6 championship game. And then Westinghouse out of the Pittsburgh City League, who's playing Myersdale, the District 5 champions. So this one is not really a true east-west divide, since
Yeah,
you've got
this is
kind
like
of the
this is like three brackets of the West and one of the East, kind of.
This one's
But like that's just the way it is, with the number of 1A schools. It obviously it's not very prevalent in the eastern side.
Yes. But speaking
But
of which, oh, good. Were you going to talk about a matchup?
no, yeah, let's say
Yeah.
I personally I think that whoever wins between the Line Mountain Lackawanna Trail, I think would play Guilfoyle in the Eastern semifinal.
I know absolutely nothing about Belmont Charter, but my formula likes them, so I'm going to say don't
Yeah.
sleep on Belmont Charter.
Okay, all right.
But that what you said was a good segue, because the PIAA released their classification numbers updates. So not some small changes. I think the big one being in 6A that the number changed by almost 40 kids. Most of the other ones are close to where they were last cycle, but we don't have the full list of teams moving up, moving down yet. We don't have the full breakdown, but there have been some reports. Some teams have come out and said, "Oh, we're over the number, we're under the number, whatever it is." So some ones that I think are noteworthy: Thomas Jefferson over the number. They're going to have to move up to 5A. Trinity, who won the Big Six conference in 4A, also having to move up to 5A. South Fayette moving down from 5A to 4A. Central Valley having to move up to 4A next year. And then Beaver Falls and Elwood City up to 3A. And Washington fell below the enrollment number, so they're able to move down to 1A if they want to. I don't know if they're going to choose to play up and stay in 2A where they've traditionally been, or if they're going to take the move down to 1A where their enrollment would put them. But I think the TJ moving up, Central Valley moving up, South Fayette moving down are some definitely noteworthy ones. And we'll get the full picture in a few weeks here when they release the full breakdown of where everyone gets slotted. But some of these initial ones that have been reported, I think are very interesting for how they're going to work out in the next cycle.
Well, on a statewide basis, what's happening is that a lot of these schools are jettisoning their co-op schools, the smaller schools that don't have a football program, because these numbers came down. Everybody's jettisoning their co-op teams, basically saying, we're not going to sign up for you in the next go round. So I don't know what a lot of these schools are going to do. And granted, it only is, I don't know, 50, 100 kids statewide, maybe, that are competing at some of these schools. But it's still ones that there's a ramification to these decisions. And I think a lot of these schools are going to lose their co-op arrangements. And a lot of kids aren't going to be playing high school football because of that next year.
And that is kind of a shame too, because like roster numbers have been going down
Yeah,
overall for the last 15 years, right? And if teams are ending their co-op agreements and fewer kids are getting opportunities to play because teams want to be in a lower classification, like I think that's it. I don't want to say it's a disservice to the kids, but it stinks for the kids, right? Because at the end of the
it's
day, right, like most of the kids that play high school football aren't going to go on to play in college. Very few will go on to play in the NFL.
right.
That it's about going out and making memories and playing for your community and being able to learn the life lessons that football teaches you. And if kids are
Yeah,
losing those opportunities, I hate to see that.
yeah, no, and but that is the yeah, some of these schools going up and down, but I think the tough part is that there's actually going to be kids that aren't going to be playing football because of this
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
nobody's talking about.
Right. Right. Yeah. Okay, and then the other thing that is worth watching is the PIA success formula. So the teams in yellow on the top half here are the teams that were forced up to play in a higher classification the last cycle. And the way the success formula reads is if these teams accumulate even one success point and have enough transfers, then they have to stay in that higher classification. So because Aliquippa won in the semifinals and got to the WPIAL championship, which is technically the first round of the state playoffs, they come out and said we had the transfer, so we have to stay up in 4A. So Aliquippa has to stay up in 4A. And the other ones, Imhotep, McDevitt, Wyomissing, Steel High, they all have the success formula numbers to stay up. I don't know about the transfer numbers. But the other thing to watch with like McDevitt is if they've got the transfers, they could get forced up to 6A next year if they get another success point because
They're
six
not.
points are higher.
They they wouldn't be afraid of that. I mean, yeah, they they're playing a 6A schedule anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, so but it does when it comes to state championships, so that's a pretty big deal. I'd really that's that's still as bad, I think, as Aliquippa. We don't talk about that too much, but they forced McDevitt up to 6A. That's just, man, that's almost criminal.
So
So
just
you
one to
you've got
watch.
a smile
Yeah.
on your face, but I'm sitting there like that's just God.
Yeah. And then the ones on the bottom half of the bracket are all ones that made it to the state finals last year. So if those teams win this week, they'll get to those 6 points that the success factor would need to potentially move them up in classification if they have enough transfers. So I don't know, about the transfers for any of those schools, but
Yeah,
just looking at the success factor number, those ones could potentially get moved up if they win this week and have the requisite number of
sure.
transfers to move up. So
Right.
just something to keep an eye on
Yeah.
for this week's games as well.
Way to go, Ian. I love it, man.
All right. So if you've enjoyed listening to us talk for like an hour and 45 minutes about high school football tonight, if you want to hear me talk more about the Steelers, you can check out the Steel City Blitz podcast. It's on Thursday nights. We air it live on YouTube at 10 o'clock or check it out anytime on
See,
any
that's just way
podcasting
too late
platform.
for me. I mean, I can't stay up that late.
Well, you
And
can check it out anytime you want later.
no, yeah, but I wanna ask you guys questions. I mean,
We
it
we
isn't
have a
just I'm
live chat just like this
huh?
show does. I said we have a live chat
I
just like this
know,
show
but
does.
so it's like, I want to do that. The show's on, on late. I have to get up the next day early because I'm broadcasting on Friday night, and
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe this week I'll make an exception and stop by.
Well, after the way the
Not that I'm a
Steelers,
Steelers fan. I'm a Bears fan.
well, we play the Bears in a few weeks, but
I know. Well,
after
see,
after
that's all right. I need to be a guest then on that show when the week that you play the Bears.
well, considering how they played this week, there will be a lot of four-letter words on the show this week. So, since this is a podcast geared towards high school football, I will warn the potential audience that there are
Yeah,
a
right.
plethora of
It
four-letter
is.
words on the show.
Right. It's rated R.
Yeah, it is not a PG-13 show.
All
All
right.
right. So thank you everyone for tuning in tonight. Thanks so much to Coach Rizzo from North Catholic, my alma mater, for tuning in and joining us this week. You can check us out on social media. I'll have my game previews up on steelcityblitz.com later in the week. So follow along, shoot us questions, Facebook, Twitter, however else you want to get in touch with us. And thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. We've got champions that are going to be crowned on Saturday this weekend, and then a full slate of championship games next weekend, too.
Yeah, how about that, man? It's really coming right down to it, and hard to imagine that we're rolling through this again. You just feel the anticipation when we're talking about it. You just kind of feel it in your gut, of all these championships, and then the PIAA there. Pretty incredible stuff again.
Yeah, yeah, and it's amazing how fast this season is gone. It's weird that it's like the middle of November and we're going to crown a WPIAL champion already. Having WPIAL championship games the weekend before Thanksgiving is kind of weird, but the season started so early this year because of um, when Labor Day was at the
Yeah.
beginning of September, that we're going to have champions crowned before Thanksgiving, which is not how it typically is.
No, not how it typically is. But anyway, all right. Well, listen, we're back after the kids are in bed at 9:30 next Monday. At least we got done before midnight this week. So
We're done before 11:30. We're better
I
off than
know.
last
Wow.
week. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there. I mean, it's whittling down a little bit, and that's okay. I think we had a lot of fun this week, and it's going to be a lot more fun as the teams whittle down. Right.
Yes. Yep.
All right. All right. Well, listen, for my buddy Ian McMeans, I'm Bruce Badgley. Listen, thanks so much for joining us and watching the WPIAL Blitz Show. See you next Monday. So long, everybody.